everybody, Josh Bennett here with College Funding Hero. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 mistakes that parents commonly make when going through the whole college funding process. So these are just 5 big ones. There's, frankly, not to be doom and gloom, there's a lot of mistakes that parents can make and usually do make, but these are the ones that tend to be the most costly from what I've seen. In terms of starting that out, the biggest and costliest, if that's a word, the most costly thing that parents do or anyone does when going through the college funding process is not planning ahead. So not planning ahead by far is going to be the most costly. And, just to kind of give you an example of why we see this being the most costly is, let's say hypothetically you don't do a budget, you don't plan for how much your college is going to cost, you just kind of go forward, apply for every school under the sun that your son or daughter wants to get into, and then all of a sudden you actually get accepted to those schools, don't get any merit or need-based aid, and now you're paying full sticker price for a college that you aren't even close to being able to afford. So let's say that you got into University of Pennsylvania, which now is about $80,000 a year, and say you can only really afford about $80,000 for 4 years. Well, now you're about $240,000 shy of being able to afford that college. And so what do most parents do? Like their kids have gotten psyched to go to this school, and instead of looking their kid in the face and saying, I can't afford this, they end up just getting student loans. And then those student loans just get compounded and become a huge burden for families. So that's the biggest mistake we see is just being retroactive with your college planning and just trying to figure out a way to make ends meet once you get into college. Or if you have the conversation ahead of time saying like, little Timmy or little Tammy, here's how much we can afford. Let's gear our college choices around our budget and find a school that you're both psyched to go to, but also that we can afford. And then that way you're setting proper expectations for your student, and they go in and they understand the value of that education, and don't feel like anything's necessarily taken away from them. So have that conversation plan and include your students in the planning process, so that way they know what you can afford and they're setting realistic expectations in their own head. So that's kind of the first mistake that we see, and that tends to be the big one, is just not planning ahead. And there's a lot of things that you can do just by looking at your resources that you have now, whether that's cash flow, money in 529 plans, money set aside in brokerage accounts, money in savings earmarked for college, grandparent assets, student assets that are saved for college. So take an account of all those different money sources and then determine how far is this going to get us? And then from there you can sort of reverse engineer exactly how much school is going to cost you and how much you can afford. So the other that we see is giving colleges too much information when you actually fill out the Fafsa form. So on the Fafsa and CSS profile, there's a lot of information that's not required. And a lot of times families will input that information anyways, but if it's not required, why are you providing the colleges more information than you necessarily need to provide them? Because that information can be used against you. So I mean, kind of like if you're getting arrested, which hopefully you are not getting arrested, but if the Miranda rights, you have the right to remain silent. Anything that you say can be used against you in court. Same kind of concept when it comes to college funding. Providing the colleges too much information can be used against you. Good rule of thumb on the FAFSA, if it's not required, don't necessarily provide more information than you have to. Another thing that we see parents miss out on all the time is, or a mistake that we see parents make, is including retirement assets on the FAFSA form. So on the FAFSA, it'll ask you about investments, and a lot of parents assume that when asked for investments, you have to provide your retirement assets, but retirement assets aren't looked at when it comes to college funding and need-based aid. So when they ask for investments, do not include your retirement assets like 401k, IRA, things like that. Don't include your house on the FAFSA. CSS profile, they'll have a section for that, but on the FAFSA, don't include your house because that, again, can be used against you. Don't use your retirement assets in your investments. That can be used against you. So make sure when it comes to investments, that is only cash that you have in the bank and stocks and bonds that you have in a taxable account or a 529 plan. So again, make sure you're not including retirement assets when you actually fill out the FAFSA form. Another mistake we see all the time is not taking advantage of Stafford loan. So what a Stafford loan is basically there's essentially good student loans and bad student loans. So the good student loans are the ones subsidized essentially by the U.S. government. So those are called Stafford loans. So there's subsidized and unsubsidized. But either way, the big difference between the loans is when they start charging interest. But either way, the Stafford loans kind of provide the lowest interest rates that are really out there. But what a lot of parents do is they will use their assets, year 1 through 3. They run out of money, and then they try to go get student loans. Well, by that point, Stafford loans are use it or lose it. So you have to start using it freshman year. Otherwise, you don't have opportunity, or you may minimize how much you're able to borrow at preferred interest rates. So again, Stafford loans are use it or lose it. So going back to that kind of first example of make sure you're planning ahead. Planning ahead can give you the benefits of knowing when you need to take Stafford loans, or if you're going to need to take Stafford loans, because those, again, interest rates are going to be significantly lower using those loans if you have to take student loans, which we prefer not to take student loans, but if you do, Stafford loans are going to be the best options, and you want to make sure you're using it each year. Like, so for example, freshman year you're able to use $5,500, sophomore year $6,500, so on and so forth. So you can use $27,000 total of Stafford loans, but it is use it or lose it. So make sure you're taking advantage of that if you need. The last mistake that we see really often is not factoring in cash flow. So parents kind of assume that they have to have just the entire amount of college lump sum saved by the day their student enters in college, which is not necessarily accurate. The reason for that is you're paying probably $300 to $500 minimum for your student to be under your roof today, whether that's keeping food and fridge stocked, electricity costs, extracurricular activities, you name it. Basically, high school students are expensive. So what a lot of parents do is just assume that their kid goes to college, they pay a lump sum, that's it. Well, what you can do is you can pay from cash flow. So let's assume that you're paying $500 a month for your student right now. If you keep up that $500 a month payment, that's an extra $24,000 over your college career that you rededicated towards paying for college. And all you have to really do to make this happen is most colleges provide you the ability to pay monthly instead of just in one lump sum each semester. And all you have to do is ask or apply. And most people just don't know this option is available. And it's usually available with zero interest and just a way to pay it over 12 months instead of one lump sum. So look into the monthly payment options at your college, because then you can factor in your cash flow as a way of easing the burden on how much you have to pay for college. So the biggest takeaway from this video is just make sure you're planning ahead, because all of these mistakes can be prevented just by simply planning ahead, knowing your budget, knowing how much you can afford, and those sorts of things. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you drop below. Otherwise, make sure you subscribe and like this video for the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe so that way you're getting lots of valuable information as you're applying and going through the college funding process. Hope you found this video valuable. Until next time, cheers.